Good morning, everybody, and welcome. It's a great pleasure to welcome you here in Bratislava, in Slovakia, to our annual conference, Vital Science. This event has been designed to showcase a number of highly supportive studies with an eye to raising awareness, utilization, and energy in pursuit of our communication and advocacy goals. And by the way, we have a lot to do. The research on display today can and will help us to confirm to public and policy makers the contribution of our industry to the food supply, to biodiversity, the economy, and the environment. I welcome our speakers today who will be presenting their work, and you will have a chance to discuss its nature and usefulness, offer opinion on future avenues of pursuit and the implication for the industry business environment. And the timing is good. Key international policy makers are beginning to awaken to the number of issues emerging from the collision of our global forces: increasing population, changing of climate, loss of biodiversity on a global scale, and water scarcity. The issue is food security, which poses a critical question. Where is our food going to come from in coming decades, and at what prices to people and to the planet? The most OECD FAO Agriculture Outlook reports very positive projections for food production growth in the US, in Canada, Australia, China, India, Russia, and Latin America, at levels ranging from 15 to 40%, based mainly on yield increases. In contrast, over the same period, net agriculture output in the EU27 will have grown less than 4%. The report says that production in the sub-Saharan region of Africa is expected to be stagnant, connected with the population, as production barely keeps pace with population growth, still around average 2.2%. In the EU27, production is also stagnant. Growth in consumption on per capita basis in this region will need to be met by imports. Incredibly, growth in agricultural production in Europe, a continent with some of the world's richest agricultural resources, is depicted as stagnant. What is wrong with this picture? And Harald von Witzke will shed some light on these issues. This is a global year of biodiversity, and ECPA is seeking to focus European policy on food productivity and to counter the lack of awareness that exists in Europe of the interconnection between food productivity, biodiversity, food security, science innovation, food prices, and climate change. We have demonstrated the evident need to increase agricultural productivity to promote biodiversity. We pointed to European trends toward restrictive regulation and proposals for new market mechanisms that may not support productive agriculture. Tim Benton is here to speak to these issues from the perspective of species population. Can we strike a balanced balance between increasing food production and maintaining a healthy environment and wildlife biodiversity? Do we bring more uncultivated land, wherever it might be, into production? Or do we sustainably increase food production on land already cultivated, utilizing advanced technologies, including the safe use of pesticide? That's what Michael Riffel will talk about. We don't think there's any argument about which choice is best. Avoid putting more land under cultivation anywhere and focus on sustainable agricultural practices to increase productivity. This is confirmed when you also take on board the fact that deforestation constitutes agriculture's most significant generator of greenhouse gases. It makes productive, sustainable agriculture the best option for feeding the population, mitigating climate change, protecting the environment, and preserving biodiversity. But there is more to consider. Europe's enormous influence on global food market, prices, and distribution must be taken into account because Europe is the world's biggest importer of agricultural products, which is rapidly expanding the land dedicated to European food needs in the developing world. The FAO calls this process a land grab. which risking further alienation of food supply from local population, destruction of rainforest and other natural habitats. More of our food needs could actually be produced in Europe within a policy framework that actively supports increasing agricultural productions through the sustainable use of crop science, rather than suppressing it. Improving European agriculture productivity will require investment in science as well as policies that uphold EU agricultural competitiveness. In this way, agriculture will remain a pillar of EU economy. Sanj Rishkar is bringing us some new findings on the impact of crop science. Our industry will certainly continue to invest in research and development to meet consumer needs, as Matthew Phillips will detail today. However, a broader understanding of the reality of agriculture by policymakers and the public will be critical if Europe is to meet the challenges of the future. In this regard, we have Paola Pofetta, who will look into one of the key barriers to acceptance of our contribution, health fears as projected in the media from the perspective of a cancer researcher. Today's session, Vital Science, look at the key aspect of the challenges ahead for our industry, the need to communicate the reality of agriculture to public and policymakers, to showcase the contribution of productive agriculture for the preservation of biodiversity, the challenge of perspective related to safety, and the central importance of research and development. Let me welcome today's speakers and presenters who have studies that aspect so well. They have much to offer us in our planning for our years ahead, for our advocacy, for our communication, and in this sense, give me your hands to welcome our speaker of today. The floor is yours. By the way, let me talk about that. There is a little bit a security problem for old colleagues standing here. Don't go backwards. It will be the biggest accident what we can have. Please, remind it all the time.
Thank you, Freedom. I'd like to introduce Lawrence King, who's going to chair the first session. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Friedhelm, for that introduction and for organising this event and asking me to chair. And I think I'll probably say that on behalf of all the chair. I now realise why I was chosen to chair. It is rather a drop at the back. As we sit here, the 10th meeting of the Conference of Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity is taking place in Nagoya, Japan. I'm sure you're all aware of that. This aims to agree a strategic plan for 2011 to 2020, plus new targets beyond that and a new vision up to 2050. Round about the same time as we're looking forward with our calculations on the human population growth, for example, that were mentioned earlier. No doubt the impacts of agriculture, particularly what's termed intensive agriculture, will be prominent in the debate. We can be sure that also farmland and farmland biodiversity will also be a key issue during the upcoming CAP reforms from 2013 onwards, with the question of if and how farming may be paid for ecosystem services in the future will be required to help meet EU policy objectives. So I think it's very timely that we have this session here today, and I'm very pleased to chair it. With no further ado, I'd like to hand over to our first presenter this morning. That's Dr. Michael Riffel from RIFCON, who's going to give you a presentation, particularly some information behind our agriculture and biodiversity leaflet from ECPA. Thanks, Michael.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for the invitation, for the possibility to present a little bit of our contribution. We contributed to the compilation of 2 brochures